In the opening scenes, we see a man entering a motel room. After curtaining the windows, he moved the bed, removed the carpet and opened the floor. After hiding a certain bag inside, the man put everything back in its place. Throughout the day, he remained in the room, while heavy rain poured outside. In the evening, the man cleaned himself up, expecting someone. Soon a guest appeared on the doorstep. When the man turned his back to the guest, the latter fired a shot. Then events take us back 10 years to 1969. A dark-skinned woman arrived at a roadside motel. In the parking lot, she noticed a Catholic priest who appeared disoriented. The priest assured her that everything was fine. The woman, named Darlene Sweet, shared that she was visiting Nevada for the first time. The priest volunteered to help her carry the things. When they entered the motel, they found only one person, Laramie Seymour Sullivan, a sales agent. The priest introduced himself as Daniel Flynn. He's originally from Indiana. Laramie seemed friendly, but the dark-skinned woman still regarded him warily. Like Laramie earlier, Daniel rang the bell at the front desk, but the concierge never showed up. Laramie said the Royale motel used to be crowded, but things have changed. Darlene noticed the photographs on the wall. This place used to be really popular. Meanwhile, Laramie continued to chatter incessantly, saying that a few years ago the motel lost its gaming license, leading to a decline in visitors. Now only the main building is operational. Darlene increasingly disliked Laramie, who had made a joke about the color of her skin. She persistently knocked on the reception desk door, and the concierge finally came out. Miles Miller apologized for keeping the guests waiting. Noticing Daniel, the guy said he should leave because this was not a good place for priests. Daniel took it as a joke, ignoring Miles' nervous state. At Laramie's request, the concierge gave the guests a tour and told them the story of the El Royale Motel, which is located on the border of two states, Nevada and California. Guests have a choice of which state to rent a room in. Laramie was surprised that Miles was the only hotel employee. Besides working at the reception, he also kept order here and served as a bartender. Daniel asked for a motel floor plan. Everyone was surprised to learn that alcohol could only be purchased on the California side, as the motel didn't have a license to sell alcohol in Nevada. At that moment, a car pulled up to the motel at high speed. Laramie watched a woman smoking in the car. Daniel booked the fourth room, and after signing the register, received the keys. Darlene Sweet wanted to stay in the farthest room, but unfortunately it was not being maintained. So she settled in Nevada, next to the priest. The same woman entered the motel. The concierge told Darlene that she had to pay an extra 25 cents. Darlene didn't have the extra money, so the priest offered to pay for her. She thanked him but declined his offer to help with her luggage. Laramie decided to let the woman go ahead. She approached the reception desk and chose the room 1. Laramie was indignant, saying he had already reserved that room. The woman didn't argue and selected another. Laramie signed the register last and entered the room 1, intended for honeymooners. No one knows that one of Laramie's suitcases has a double bottom with a tool case underneath. After checking his watch, Laramie called his wife and asked her to hand the phone to the daughter. During the conversation, Laramie took the phone apart with tools and found a bug. Going through everything in the room, Laramie found many more listening devices and microphones. At one point, his attention was drawn to a large mirror. Afterward, Laramie examined the surroundings outside, and ensuring there was no one around, returned to the reception desk and stole a master key. This allowed him to open a hidden door and enter the room adjacent to the first one. The mirror turned out to be a one-way window. But Laramie was sure that it wasn't the only dark secret in this place. He was right. In each room, there was a gazelle mirror for observing the guests. Walking past the rooms, Laramie saw Daniel Flynn dismantling the floor. Darlene Sweet was rehearsing a song. Laramie could not only observe but also hear what was happening. He returned and witnessed the priest standing in a hole in the floor, looking detached. Darlene continued to sing. Finding nothing suspicious about it, Laramie went forward. Emily Summerspring dragged an unconscious girl into the room. Additionally, Emily had a rifle with her. Laramie found a video camera. Apparently, someone was not only watching the guests, but also filming them. As Laramie hastily left the place, Daniel sat in a chair with the same detached look. Laramie went into a phone booth and contacted his boss, informing him that he had arrived at the El Royale. It turned out that Laramie's real name is Dwight Broadbeck, and he is an undercover FBI agent. Meanwhile, we are shown what is happening in room 5. Darlene recalls how she showcased her singing to a producer buddy Sunday. At some point, Sunday asked Darlene to stop and bluntly told her that he didn't consider her talented enough to invest his time and money in. However, Sunday had an offer for Darlene. If she dedicated a year of her life to him, she would perform as a solo artist and gain fame. Darlene couldn't afford to refuse. When Sunday left, she couldn't hold back her tears. In the present, Darlene is in the same room. She never received the promised fame. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. Father Flynn stood at the door in the rain, saying he had heard her singing through the wall and was very impressed. Daniel invited Darlene to have dinner together in the lobby. It would be his payment for listening to her sing. Feeling awkward, Darlene reluctantly agreed. There was no concierge in the lobby, so Daniel decided to organize the dinner himself. The news reported that someone had took the lives of a married couple. This person was well known in Malibu County, actively involved in charity. Daniel lit the fireplace, and Darlene played music. After buying food, they chatted amiably. Darlene shared that a church choir was the first place she had ever sung. At some point, the priest offered her a drink, but she declined. He went to the bar to pour whiskey. When Daniel returned to the table, he asked Darlene what had brought her to Nevada. Darlene said that she had a performance at a lottery club tomorrow night. Of course, it wasn't at all what she'd dreamed of. In turn, Daniel shared that he had been experiencing memory problems in recent years, and it wasn't just about his age. Sometimes he woke up and couldn't remember who he was. Today in the motel parking lot, he had another memory lapse. It turned out he had already seen a doctor and didn't hear anything reassuring. Darlene genuinely felt sorry to hear this. Daniel offered her a drink again, and this time she agreed. The priest put something in Darlene's whiskey, unaware that she would come up behind him and knock him out. The bottle shattered. Meanwhile in Washington, Broadbeck's report was being studied. His top priority was to find a certain tape. Dwight is currently working on it. His superiors ordered him to detain all motel guests until all existing surveillance materials are found. At night, Dwight went under the hood of each guest's car and messed up the ignition. He also informed his boss that he had witnessed a kidnapping in one of the rooms. However, the higher-ups didn't consider it significant and instructed Agent Broadbeck not to intervene and to focus on the top priority task. Next we moved to room 7. In the past on the beach, a guy approached a girl who looked sad. It turned out her heavy memories were related to her father. The guy's name was Billy Lee. He seemed very friendly and suggested that the girl named Rose go for a swim together. In the present, Rose woke up in the motel. Emily assured Rose that everything was okay. Emily couldn't let her go now, saying they needed to get away from that person as far as possible. For Emily it didn't matter what Rose had done, she would help her anyway. Afterward, they could start fresh. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Emily heard Laramie's voice, who was supposedly checking if the rooms had lost power due to the storm at the request of the concierge. Emily told Laramie to get out. Then he kicked in the door, neutralized Emily and rushed over to Rose, freeing her. This triggered Emily's memories of the past. Her father used to drink a lot. That night, Emily hid her younger sister Rose under the bed and told her to stay quiet, no matter what happened. In the present, Emily took the rifle and ordered her sister to step away from Laramie. The undercover agent tried to negotiate, but Emily fired. The sisters were bewildered when they saw a corridor behind the shattered mirror. Someone was calling for help. Some time ago, Miles Miller found the priest lying on the floor, gradually regaining consciousness. Daniel was disoriented and didn't understand what was happening. He couldn't even remember who had attacked him and why. Seizing the opportunity, Miles asked the priest for help. Miles is a very religious person, although he hadn't attended church for many years. Now Miles wants to confess, but Daniel said it wasn't the most appropriate moment. The guy then burst into tears, confessing that he had done terrible things. He's afraid for his soul, but Daniel doesn't care. When the priest who supposedly couldn't get into his room asked Miles for the universal key, Miles discovered it was missing. After that, Miles told Daniel again that this was not the best place for priests. Daniel saw the gazelle mirrors and the camera with his own eyes and demanded an explanation from Miles. The guy assured that he only observed those whom the administration instructed him to watch. The films are usually developed in the motel's storage room and sent to a P.O. box in Pennsylvania. Miles also confessed that there was one undeveloped film. Some time ago, a high-ranking person had stayed at the motel. This person had been very kind to Miles, so he lied to the administration that the guest hadn't done anything worth noting. But Miles wanted to confess for something else. According to him, he had done much worse things. Suddenly they saw Emily, who was holding another young woman here for some reason. But Daniel didn't care about this. He was only interested in where that film was. Suddenly Laramie knocked on Emily's door. Miles realized that something terrible was about to happen. When Laramie broke down the door, Daniel shouted at Miles to step away from the window. But the guy didn't make it. A shot rang out. Injured Miles begged the priest for help, but he fled. Meanwhile, Emily tried to figure out what was behind the mirrors. After Darlene knocked out Daniel, she rushed to her room for the car keys. Darlene planned to leave right away but lurked when she saw someone in the parking lot. Laramie messed up the ignition of each of the cars. When he left, Darlene still attempted to start her car, but in vain. In desperation Darlene prayed, asking the Lord to show her the way. However, she was distracted by Laramie, who was heading towards Emily's room. Darlene got out of the car, and hiding watched. While her sister was figuring out the situation, Rose discreetly called someone, and finding the motel's address on the brochure, gave the caller her location. When Emily called out to her sister, Darlene entered the room and took Dwight's gun and the car ignition wires. However, the car still wouldn't start. Darlene was stuck here. Suddenly the priest approached her car, saying he wanted to explain. Darlene let him in but remained cautious the whole time. Daniel assured her he didn't intend to harm her. He just needed to get into room 5 at any cost. The man also admitted that he wasn't really a priest. The subsequent events are somehow connected to room 5. 10 years ago Daniel, whose real name is Donald O'Kelly, his brother Felix and their accomplice robbed a collection vehicle. Donald handed the bag of money to his brother. The plan was for Donald to lead the police on a false trail and then destroy the car. The brothers agreed to meet at the Royale. However, Donald was caught and sentenced to 15 years for the robbery. Soon he began to suffer from disorientation and memory lapses. That's how 10 years went by. The prison doctor, after examining the results of a tomography, diagnosed Alzheimer's disease. According to him, the disease is progressing. In 6 months, Donald will be eligible for parole, but by then he might lose himself. In the present, Donald told Darlene that their gang was betrayed by the accomplice. Felix managed to hide the money under the floor of one of the Royale rooms before the accomplice came and took his life. Donald couldn't remember which room exactly the money was hidden in. He had checked into room 4, but it turned out the money was in room 5, where Darlene stayed. Donald offered Darlene half of the money if she helped him. Darlene understood that this was her chance to change her life forever, so she agreed to Donald's offer. While Rose danced carefreely, Emily interrogated injured Miles. The wound turned out to be minor, but Miles was very frightened. Emily wanted to know who was spying on the guests and why. Miles on the other hand assured her that he wouldn't tell anyone what had happened in her room. In this motel, Miles had seen things far worse. Meanwhile, Rose continued to goof around like everything was normal. Emily didn't know that her sister had already called the person they were running from. Next we see Darlene singing. It's what makes her happy. However, Darlene's talent never brought her money or fame. Taking off her wig, Darlene continued singing in front of the mirror. At that moment, Donald was about to dismantle the floor. They didn't know that Emily, who was walking along the secret corridor, was watching Darlene. Finally, Donald reached the money. Meanwhile, Miles begged Rose to release him. But Rose said that everything here was not decided by her or even her sister. Emily returned and demanded answers from Miles about the whereabouts of the priest. Suddenly Rose intervened in the conversation, saying that they would have guessed soon. Donald and Darlene planned to escape with the money, but Billy's henchmen captured them. Billy Lee himself was already here. He came for Rose. Next we are introduced to Billy Lee. Possessing charisma and gift of persuasion, he organized a cult. Billy is good at pretending. Emily believes that he cares for her sister. But one day Billy Lee revealed his true nature. That night as usual he preached to his followers who were mesmerized by his words. Everyone was impressed by Billy's knowledge of the universe and his sense of humor. At some point he asked 2 girls, Rose and Millie, to approach him. He wanted to set up a fight between them. The winner would get him as a reward. Charmed by Billy, Rose agreed without hesitation. When the girls started to fight, Emily tried to intervene, but Billy wouldn't allow it. Billy was clearly enjoying the situation. Even when he stopped the fight, Rose remained aggressive, unwilling to give in to Millie. Emily realized that there was something sinister underneath Billy's speeches about God. In the present, Billy Lee and his cultists took the motel's guests hostage. Rose was happy to be reunited with her beloved. Frightened Miles asked Donald for absolution, not knowing he was no priest. In Donald's bag, Billy found the money and the film. After that, he told Emily that it was impolite of her to leave without saying goodbye. Emily only wanted to save her sister. Billy reminded her that Rose had recently done something very bad, making her one of them. Billy suspects that this motel is sponsored by some observers. The man dressed as a priest confirmed his suspicion. After examining the film, Billy understood that a high-ranking person, known throughout the country, had stayed at the motel. But this person is no longer alive. Billy demanded that Darlene answer what the money was. Darlene lied that it was money she supposedly earned by singing. Of course Billy didn't believe her. But Donald confirmed her story, refusing to explain anything further. Emily also refused to cooperate with Billy Lee. Rose calmly watched this, advising her sister to do whatever Billy said. Telling Emily to choose a color between red and black, Billy started a game of roulette that would indicate who would lose their life now, Emily or Miles. The guy in a panic begged the pseudo-priest to absolve him of his sins. Unable to bear it, Billy said that this man was not a priest at all, which plunged Miles into even greater horror. The roulette wheel pointed to Emily, whom Billy took her life. Watching this, Rose showed no emotion. Billy brought her to the others, intending to spin the roulette again. Donald calmly asked for whiskey. When Billy asked again where the money came from, Donald told the truth. A couple of days ago, he was released on parole, and disguised as a priest, returned for the money. The disguise was necessary to avoid arousing suspicion from the others. Darlene confirmed his story. Billy realized that the film was far more valuable than the money. However, Darlene didn't care about the contents of the film. Moreover, people like Billy Lee bored her. Individuals like him are particularly vulnerable and only live off the lost and weak. From the look on Billy's face, all of Darlene's words were true. Everyone in the room understood that the film with compromising material was worth a fortune. Billy demanded the pseudo-priest to reveal his real name, but due to Alzheimer's disease, he couldn't remember it. This infuriated Billy, and he was about to spin the roulette again when suddenly a lightning strike caused the power to go out. It became quiet, which displeased Billy. He wanted Darlene to sing. Despite her fear, Darlene complied. If these were her last moments, she preferred to spend it feeling happy. Billy didn't like her singing, so he started the roulette again. At that moment, Donald attacked him. There was a fight and a shootout. Darlene asked Miles to help Donald, but he refused. The guy had 123 human lives on his conscience, but he didn't want to continue. In the past, Miles was a sniper and served in hotspots. Only his faith in God helped him not to go insane. In the present, he kept repeating that he couldn't go on like this. Darlene smiled, accepting her fate. However, when it became clear that Billy had won the fight, Miles took a gun and neutralized him. The same fate befell the other cult members. Miles acted with sniper precision, so no one could escape. Rose mourned Billy. When Miles approached her, saying he was very sorry, she inflicted a fatal injury on him. Donald in turn dealt with Rose. A fire broke out in the motel as a result of the fight. Donald and Darlene realized that Miles couldn't be saved anymore. Wanting to ease his fate in some way, Donald told him that he was Father Daniel Flynn, who was here to absolve him of his sins. Miles repented for everything he had done during his military service. Donald granted him forgiveness. After that, Miles passed away. Donald and Darlene quickly gathered the money into the bag. Before leaving, Darlene threw the compromising film and the logbook into the fire. The next day, Donald came to the lottery club where Darlene Sweet was performing in front of a small audience. When she saw Donald in the audience, she smiled sincerely. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.